the first sound that made Emily Carter pause in the empty hallway of street. Mary's high school was not the creak of the old pipes or the scratch of a rat in the walls, but the unmistakable whisper of a child's voice behind a locked classroom door, soft and urgent, saying her name as if it already knew she was there, and even though she told herself that it had to be her imagination, some trick of the echoing halls, she found her feet rooted to the spot, her hand frozen on the keyring that swung at her side. Emily had been working as the school's night custodian for 3 years, and she had heard all the stories whispered by teachers and students alike about the 3rd floor of the West Wing being haunted, about a tragedy decades earlier when a teacher had lost control and locked his class inside, about the children who never walked out again, but she had never believed them, at least not until that night when she was utterly alone, or at least she thought she was, in the silent, crumbling school. The air was heavy, with the smell of dust and mold, the faint buzz of a dying fluorescent light overhead pressing against her nerves as she slowly turned toward classroom 3B, the very one students avoided during the day, the one that had been permanently sealed after the incident. Her hand trembled as she lifted the heavy ring of keys, each one cold, each one jingling far too loudly in the stillness, and she told herself she was being foolish, that the voice was in her head, but then it spoke again, clearer this time, as if a child stood inches from the other side of the door, a little boy's voice whispering, "Help us, please." Emily felt her heart slam against her ribs, a sharp pain in her chest as instinct screamed for her to run. But curiosity, or perhaps something darker, drove her closer. She pressed her ear to the wood, the paint peeling beneath her cheek, and she could hear more now, a chorus of faint murmurs, children whispering in unison, words she couldn't fully make out, overlapping voices that seemed to rise and fall like waves on a shore. With shaking hands, she tried several keys, though she knew none should fit, because the principal had told her years ago that 3B was sealed for good, welded shut after too many break-ins from curious students. Yet one key, small and brass, slid into the lock with a sickening ease, and the door, though stiff from age, creaked open with a groan that seemed far louder than it should have been, echoing down the endless hallway. The stench hit her first, the reek of rot and dampness, the kind of smell that clings to the back of your throat, and she gagged, covering her mouth with her sleeve. The room was completely dark, except for the thin slice of moonlight bleeding through a cracked window, dust floating like pale ash in the beam, and as her eyes adjusted, she saw rows of ancient desks still in place, the blackboard stained with words half erased, the chalk smudged into ghostly lines. And then she saw them, small figures hunched in the corners, their outlines too still, too wrong, their faces pale and waxy, as if sculpted from candle wax, eyes like hollow sockets that glistened faintly in the moonlight. At first, she thought they were mannequins or abandoned dolls, left behind from some strange art project, but one of them moved its head toward her with a slow, jerking snap, and she heard the sound again, a whisper, but this time it came from all of them at once, overlapping, layered, hundreds of voices spilling into her skull. "Stay with us." Emily stumbled back, her keys clattering to the ground, and the sound of metal on tile made every figure twitch, their limbs bending unnaturally, as if their bones had been broken and reset in the wrong places. She tried to close the door, but an icy hand shot out, gripping the wood from the inside. The fingers long and thin, nails cracked and jagged, and in the dim light she saw it was not a hand that belonged to a child, but something stretched and grotesque. She screamed and slammed her weight against the door, wrenching it shut, the impact rattling the lock as whatever was inside clawed against it, scratching deep grooves into the wood. Breathless, she backed away, her chest heaving, the voices still spilling through the door, louder now, no longer whispers but shrill cries, like dozens of children begging all at once, and above them, rising like a wave, came a deeper voice, one that did not belong to any child, one that seemed to rumble from the floor itself, calling her name with a slow, mocking drawl. She turned and ran, the long hallway stretching endlessly ahead of her, every light flickering and buzzing as if ready to die, her footsteps slapping against the tile, echoing like gunshots. She thought she was free when she reached the stairwell, But as she gripped the railing, she froze, because she heard the faint patter of feet behind her, small feet running, dozens of them keeping perfect pace with her. She bolted down the stairs, nearly tumbling as the steps blurred beneath her, and when she burst into the main hall, she thought she was safe, until she saw the shadows. They moved along the walls and ceiling, long and stretched like the outlines of children, but distorted, their heads too large, their arms too long, and they all faced her even though no bodies cast them. Emily staggered backward, clutching her head as the whispers grew unbearable, pressing into her skull like nails, filling her mind with fragments of words she could not understand, phrases in a language she had never heard yet somehow recognized in the deepest parts of her brain. She fled into the gymnasium, its wide open space offering no comfort as the echoes followed her, and in the center of the polished floor she stopped, her chest burning, sweat dripping down her face, and for a moment the silence returned, the whispers gone. She thought she had escaped, that maybe she had imagined it, that her exhaustion had conjured hallucinations, but then the lights snapped off one by one, plunging her into absolute darkness, and in that silence, she heard a giggle, high and sweet, the sound of a little girl no older than 6, and it came from directly behind her. Her scream tore through the gym as she spun, and in the faint glow of the emergency exit sign, she saw a small figure standing only feet away. The girl wore a torn school uniform, her hair matted, her face pale, but it was her mouth that froze Emily in terror, stretched impossibly wide, splitting her cheeks into ragged tears, a grin carved into her flesh. The girl whispered, "It's your turn now." And as she stepped closer, Emily stumbled back until her spine hit the wall. The gym doors slammed shut on their own, the sound like a gunshot. And all at once the room filled with children, their bodies crawling from the shadows, their limbs bending backward, their eyes hollow yet burning with faint red light. Emily pressed her palms to her ears, sobbing as the voices screamed now, a deafening roar that shook the rafters, and she realized with a sudden, sinking horror that they were not asking for help, not begging for escape, but inviting her in, pulling her into whatever endless nightmare they were trapped in. She ran toward the exit, shoving through the mob of cold, grasping hands, their nails raking her arms, tearing her uniform. But she made it to the door and burst into the night air, collapsing on the steps outside. The cool wind hit her face, grounding her for a moment, and she thought she was safe. But when she looked up at the windows of the school, she saw dozens of pale faces pressed against the glass, all smiling, all watching, their mouths moving in unison. She couldn't hear them anymore, but she could read their lips, every single one mouthing the same 2 words over and over. Come back. Emily never returned to Street, Mary's high school, and when the principal arrived the next morning, he found the door to classroom 3B sealed tight again. The lock rusted shut, as if it had never been opened, and the only sign of anything unusual was the word carved deep into the wood, jagged and raw, still dripping as though fresh. It read her name,